most people, when they go to a coffee shop and get served a bad cup of coffee, just, drink it, pay for it, and leave. Maybe they don't come back. Others end up, maybe even go as far as complaining about the cup, demanding the barista makes a new one. And if you Henlo, you just go home and decide, I'm going to build the first ever South African espresso machine to make their job a little bit easier. So Henlo, welcome to the Rubata show, man.
No, thanks, Ramiro. I appreciate you having me on board. It's absolutely a privilege to get a stage to share just our point of view and give a bit more insight in who we are and what we're doing.
Amazing, man. I don't know if you do just want to take us back. I remember I've never really forgotten the story of how you got, into making the Henlo machines. But just for those that haven't heard it, maybe you just want to take us back to where it all kind of started.
Yeah, I think it's as most stories, it starts over a cup of coffee. We're sitting there in Stellenbosch, studied in the area, fell in love with the coffee culture, not necessarily just for the taste or the craftsmanship, because as a general consumer, I didn't really understand much of the specialty side of things. So for me, it was all about the engagement with the barista. And then again, even the lack of knowledge regarding what a specialty cup is or why does coffee taste better than the other one. It was more about the consistency and experience that kept me drawing back to the same places, getting the same experiences. You get used to these rhythms and things like that. And then every now and then I did have a bad cup, which prompted me to maybe try one of the other stores. And that's where this notion started about captivating your audience with your own experience, whatever that might be, and then just giving you the tools to consistently execute that. At the time, I was still studying to be a mechanical engineer. So as all mechanical engineers aspire, you want to go work in the automotive industry because it looks glorious with all the flashy things and, the big bucks. That's some vacation work. It's not all it clued up to be in the space and what I was looking for. So I decided to go look at different types of ventures. And while drinking a coffee one day on a brisk summer morning, I started chatting to the barista about the cost of his equipment. And when I saw that the machine they just got is about the same as a car, I thought to myself, like, honestly, a car is so complex in what it does. There's no way I can take that on my own. But a coffee machine is generally just a fancy kettle. I'm pretty sure I can get something done in this. And that's where it started, Ramiro. It's not really much to it. I know a lot of the guys in the industry love to draw comparison between coffee machines and cars, but in all honesty, it's not even the same sport. But yeah, so that's just what I decided to do. From there on out, it was all about talking to the baristas, understanding what is unique to their challenges and what's unique to South Africa. We decided very early on not to try and look at other machines when we developed our own, because we wanted to take an approach where we listen to the South African market first, which is fundamentally different than any of the other espresso machines currently in the market, which is developed most likely in your first world country or first world problems. So then I very quickly identified that consistency in terms of putting the barista in the center of this equation is what we're going to be chasing, not necessarily building the fanciest tech out there that's got all these bells and whistles that the pros can really extract proper value, but it's about getting that guy in South Africa where labor is the core essence of any of our service industries, and rather upskilling him to become better, and not rely on technology in a doing sense, but more in a training sense. I think that's the biggest fundamental mind shift to what we are chasing to do.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, really incredible. And it's always stood out because it is, like you say, such a different approach. It is interesting though. I mean, most people, I would almost say it's probably smarter in most cases to kind of look what's already there, right? Instead of starting from scratch because someone's, already done the long miles. But the reason, I think then you would have ended up on a very similar machine, right? If you went that route.
Yeah. Look, Ramiro, it all comes down to when you look at any engineering approach to complex systems, which some would say a coffee machine is once you really start understanding what is required and what the outcomes are, if you're not able to, build this entire machine on a paper napkin in 5 minutes saying this thing needs to go here, this thing needs to go there, then you're not going to be able to execute in terms of building something that's, simply pure. So like I said, it's not a car. There's going to be challenges,
Yeah.
but fundamentally, a coffee machine is not that difficult to understand. And that's the biggest barrier for me was to find anyone who I could phone up and just chat about like what is in a coffee machine. So I ended up looking at maintenance videos on YouTube to see how these guys use these little parts and this is where this gets. And then the biggest step was just procurement, getting all these little fittings and things in hand to be able to build a machine in the first place. Because it's very tightly locked and controlled environment where you need to foster these relationships to get access. And that I would say is much more the bigger barrier to entry. But yeah, like I said, Ramiro, there's so many new ways of manufacturing and things that are unique to South Africa. Once again, our labor and our artisans in terms of steel work and the raw materials is fundamentally different than that of Europe. So why do we need to design around these philosophies that are not applicable to South Africa? And that's why we decided to break stuff and do things wrong and then learn why it's done wrong. But in
Yeah.
that same sense, we wanted any technician to be able to work on the machine. So that kept us grounded and not completely throwing out the boat and doing everything weird. So all your parts and things that are coffee centric are still coffee centric. We just found new ways to make these assemblies into something that we felt was an easier approach with all of the changes that we've made. Yeah, I think that's
How
that's
how
it.
was that how was that in the beginning in terms of the support around it? Because obviously that could sound like quite a difficult thing to kind of go for, like, oh, I'm gonna make my own machine, I'm gonna do it differently, gonna look at it more from a South African context. Were people kind of backing you from the start, like, oh, you can really do this, or was there also some kind of doubt when you were chatting to people?
No, look, when I wanted to start this business, fundamentally, there's two ways to start a startup. The one is you're going to be doing it on the side. It's going to be a slow, progressive growth, natural clientele, and at some point, there's a tipping point of inflection, and you can finally take this on full time. Whereas the second approach is the one we needed to take, was the one where we had to get upfront funding in order to build these machines and prototype them, and then only start going to market and all these other things. So I spoke to about 30 to 40 different potential investors in a span of, I would say, a year or 2 years. And all of them with their own challenges, approach, inputs, criticisms, which is great. You need that. You need all these perspectives from guys in the industry, not in the industry, guys in manufacturing, guys in sales, to give you critique on the plot holes and the issues that you will face once you get out there. Especially the biggest deterrent, I think, for other guys manufacturing machines or wanting to manufacture machines in South Africa is finding that moat. And with a moat, I mean it's going to be your distinguishing factor. That's a thing that you can build, and then no one else can follow you because you have this unique aspect that surrounds your product. So the hardest challenge was to identify exactly what our moat will be. And the tricky thing is, it's not as simple as just patenting a Steam one, or doing this one other thing. It's going
Yeah.
to be a systematic thing of the relationships that we have, the way we do things, how agile we can be, the products we create, what we can create next. And that was definitely the biggest point of doubt as well. Because I can chat to guys about we're going to do things this way, but fundamentally, if they feel strongly that that's not the right approach, then yeah, it did become difficult sometimes to find some traction. But with that said, going through all these learnings and getting all this criticism, at some point you just get to a place where it would be stupid not to pursue it, and that
Yeah.
felt really well.
Sure. I mean, that ties perfectly in with something that you said to me when we were up at Joburg now at the Specialty Coffee Expo. For those that don't know, I've had a privilege to kind of see some of the behind the scenes on designs from a few years back at old Desro store, or old Caffè, and throughout every now and again meeting up and up in Joburg, you mentioned again that you aren't trying to sell features. If a new model comes out or something, you're not just adding an additional feature. If you're not selling features and that wasn't the thing that you patented, what are you selling?
So Ramiro, the idea about what we are doing is it wasn't a machine first approach. Like I said, when I started doing these things, my fundamental criticism or the problem I wanted to solve was consistency through empowering the barista. Nowhere in that equation do you absolutely need a machine. There's multiple ways you could go around creating businesses and systems that continuously upskill baristas. But what we found fundamentally was we wanted to put something in front of the barista that as he's pulling shots, that can let him know what is going on, but then also be a tool that we could later mold and keep on molding. And that's why the big touchscreens was such a no-brainer for us, because we can continuously enrich their user experience and the tools for creating better coffee or doing training directly on the machine. But then only also when you're in the field and you're starting to pull these shots at a rapid rate, we can add tools that make you do it quicker, but also that would let you know when something goes wrong, or would completely lock you out if something goes wrong and you don't want to change it. So we wanted to control that. That was the idea. That was the essence of what we wanted to do. And then to enable to do this over a longer period, we knew we had to be sustainable. It's always great sitting around a pub with a nice beer in hand and talking about how you want to change the industry, and you can take your clients out for fancy meals and really swoo them. But the fundamental thing is if there's no business case to be made for this continuous interaction, what is the point? So then we decided to rather create this ecosystem, which would be more of a subscription model based on the data feedback and all of these things that is entirely optional when it comes to the machinery. So it's up to us to ensure that it's something the guys want and are willing to pay for and adds value to their service day to day. But then that becomes our product. Our product is when we go to you, we are going to ensure that you make great coffee by consistently upskilling the barista, giving you feedback on how well they are doing when things go wrong, what went wrong. But we're also going to give you these tools, these checksums inside the business during operation that's also going to let them know, look, this is where it needs to be. This is the standard. This is the bar. So it's basically like getting a manager in there to stand over your barista and continuously watch him and tell him when he does things wrong and then report back to the manager. That is our product. What we found is there's no machine on market that was able to fulfill these duties to our satisfaction, because we very closely need to monitor the software and the hardware integration to be able to know, was this the barista or was it not the barista? And only when we have all those data, then our dashboards, then the data we provide becomes usable. Else it's just going to be garbage in, garbage out. So that's why we fundamentally had to invest in building this machine. But now it's interesting, because now we put a machine on the market that's no longer linked to a multiple tiers, because we've got all these products in chain that compete against each other at different price points. It's all about just getting more of these types of solutions out there. And we absolutely could focus on trying to extract as much value out of these machines as possible in terms of your sustainable or your product market. But then we start building a business that finds success by doing these types of things, And when you find success doing something, you're always going to want to continue doing that to continue with the success, because it just works, So that's why we fundamentally decided from day one, let's not do that. Because if we do these things and we find a little bit of revenue like here, and then we can reinvest in other areas that was closer to our vision, at some point, it would become very difficult to steer this thing that moves in its own direction that's not aligned with what we fundamentally wanted to employ in the system. And then we just become another coffee machine manufacturer. And that's really not what we want to do. So I think that should probably answer your question.
Yeah. No, it's a crazy. And I think it was so cool seeing so many people come and play on the machine at the expo, and even other times when you've been down in Cape Town and see the whole gamification. Because I think, there would have been ways to kind of make it seem, you gave the picture of a manager over the barista's shoulder. In real life, that doesn't sound super fun, the micromanagement. But when you see it on the machine, it feels like you're playing a game. You yourself want to beat your score. You want to have the best score. And the machine obviously works with kind of, scores. So 0 would be a perfect score. What have you found? Obviously, the idea was to help baristas with consistency, to help managers manage their the business better through all this data. In the last couple of years, have you found maybe owners or even baristas come to you with some feedback on how much they've grown? Like, have you been able to see that over the last few years, and maybe if you've got like a story covering that?
Yeah, I think, Romero, it's been really interesting. So when I drop a machine into any new client's area, there's an immediate uptick in consistency. So what we'd usually do is we'd let them run for about a day without introducing them to anything. I'll just set up a profile, they just make coffee. And then I take that data as a baseline, saying like, this is where you guys are currently at. And it's interesting because always when you drop the machine there and you grind your first shot, always runs too fast. No matter who it is, it's always a consistency issue in that regard. But the guys just have no idea because they can't check it consistently, and that makes it tricky. So when we do this, that first baristas that I had the time with to interact and to show the machine are also usually the guys who are the most inclined to want to change or do better, because the shop owners usually tell me to come deliver the machine when they hit baristas on servers. For them, it's great. It's fundamentally fantastic. They see the difference. The steam temperature on the milk is a big one as well. When we had some people come back to us and say, all the clients always complain and head office complains that the milk's too cold, but she was adamant it's not the problem. And then she steamed the one jug of milk on our machine and she's like, maybe I was wrong, you know? So it's all these little things that does help. But we have found that along the line, say it's usually about at the 12 to 15 week interval, that's when staff turnover starts happening and managers start leaving and they move on to different stores. And that's when it really plummets. Then you get your consistently bad shots, and that's the time where you want to see your brand or your manager interact with the system, to see them pull the new guys in and give them a fundamental level understanding. But that's definitely our next challenge. Great thing for us is we've got so many ways we can address this, whether it's through prompts on the screen, giving baristas training when a couple of days went wrong, or automated emails that get sent to the shop owner or even the roastery, because the roastery is also inclined to ensure that the coffee's been executed perfectly, or else the guys might switch up suppliers. So we know what the problems are. But the great thing is that's just the fundamental learnings of the business. Is you'll see everything we do is not a set in stone move we make. We know we don't know what we don't know. I mean, touch wood, but around the corner, say 3 months from now, we might have a catastrophic problem with all of our machines, and we'll have to recall all these things and do these things different. But that's part of the game we play, and we've prepared for that in the best possible way we can. And yeah, it's been great having all these early adopters who would backed us over the last 2-3 years when things were really, really tough. But they went out of their way, and we had this mutual understanding of where this thing is going. And they've stood by us, even for the guys who have had multiple phone calls with me, if not very excited about the way things are currently. But we do get rewarded in the sense that when a week goes by and then a month and then it becomes 3 months without any calls or anything that goes wrong with any machine, then we take those learnings in stride as well. But yeah, Romero, it's interesting to see how powerful this can be, but we need to make better ways to ensure that it's still a bit more in your face, a bit more adequate. We've already dropped it on our latest machine at Vida. We put that automated prompts in the system already. So when shots run over or under, like you saw at the expo as well, they do get a physical prompt on the screen. It's not necessarily the final solution, but it is a good first step to see what's the impact of this. And then another learning would be not just in that specific Vida, we might have a very capable barista, but maybe they move out to more stores. And then we can fundamentally start seeing and adapt to these challenges to ensure that their brand reputation retains as much clients going forward as possible.
Sure. I think that's also been so cool and you mentioned it earlier in terms of the manufacturing. You don't have multiple units, different price points, competing against each other. And, with the touchscreen, someone could be like, oh, it's just to be fancy. But really the cool part is your one machine can have almost, infinite updates basically to the interface and everything, the button sizes. So if you were to get that feedback on your first machine with physical buttons, like, oh, they're too small, you would have to go redesign, the front panel and everything. Where in this case, you've told me multiple times on how you guys have been able to update things based on these cafes experiences and use cases.
Yeah,
which is really smart, really
the software is great as well, but the way we made the hardware as well made it adaptable to change. So when you've got two models on our website, both two groups, the second one being our latest model, fundamentally the same machine. It's nothing different to them aside from the way they look. But I spent time with, I think it was one of the guys from Plato, actually, they played on the machine for a week and a half there, and he said he wants the water spout here, he wants this here, he wants this here, and we did that. Just because we know these guys have experience in ways that we don't. This guy specifically goes out and does a lot of training on a new store, so he sees the challenges head on from what new guys working on new machines and what workflow works well and what doesn't. And being in South Africa, that's great because now everything is local and we've got these parts and we've got these things that we could continuously update and change. But yes, after the Truth 6-week trial we had there, 4-week trial we had the end of last year, the new touchscreens was a no-brainer in terms of speed and how responsive we can make the system feel. But fundamentally, still the same machine. So now everybody gets locked up, and that backed up over the last couple of years. And as soon as I drop by, they walk away, and they've got a brand new machine sitting on their bar.
Yeah, yeah, that's really amazing. With obviously you're not selling features, and so much of what you guys do and the value that you guys add is clear in that. But Henlo machines don't lack features by any means. So what are some features that people may not be used to seeing, in the average cafe on your machines that people can expect from it?
Yeah. Okay. So Romero, also fundamentally, the key to our machine is we bolt features into the machine that makes the barista's job as easy as possible to execute. But very importantly, we don't want to eliminate steps that you would need to take on any other machine you work on. So with that in mind, what we've got the flow meters in there. We've got the pressure profiling you've seen before, so you can play with different speeds as well. But that also helps with maintenance. And then you've got your very, very thermally stable group heads that's fully saturated, ensure you just get that proper temperature. Big heat exchanger through the steam boiler, massive steam boiler. Running with single power, but you can run off a generator or even a 20 amp breaker if you really want to through a 3-volt plug. Because we found these are all things South Africans do. And we want these things.
Yes.
Want to be able to just move a machine around. Variable speed pump on the inside was also been quite interesting adequate. So I know a lot of guys when they install machines and things change, you have to change the filter, and then you've got a pressure reducer in there, and you've got all these things. With our machine, it can automatically detect what the inlet pressure is and adapt the pump speed to ensure that it's always up to scratch. Whether you're running off a bucket or you plumb it in line, you just turn the machine on and it will do these things itself. But I think from a feature set for a client that's closer aligned to what we want to do, like you said, the gamification on pulling shots, absolutely, that's one of our biggest features. And then the one that people might not be used to is the automatic shut or steam ones. So we've got a temperature probe in there, all manufactured local, even the 3D printed mounting parts and everything we've got that we retrofit, all local products. And then when you can preset the temperature, and once the steam one reaches that temperature, it shuts itself off. So it gives this barista a second action he needs to employ if he wants to continue steaming. But the thing is, you want to shut it off at the right temperature so you can have a real interactive experience of, should I continue steaming because maybe the consistency of the milk's not right, or should I split the milk, add some more cold walk, and then try again, which is the right thing to do. So all of these little things is our technologies and features, I think, that you would be a battle to find at the price point that we sell at, but that's because we only have one product in the market, and our clients are the ones who benefit from that by far and large the most.
Yeah, I think it's such a seemingly simple thing, but so many people are blown away, watching everyone's faces when they're busy steaming, because you don't have to push a button, so it just shuts off. It's very weird. I remember the first time I did it, I think it was at Simple Brew, steaming on it, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna switch it off now, and then it just stops, and then you still wipe and purge as normal. But what's great about it is, as a barista, you're still in charge of how much you're aerating that milk. Like, you still need that skill in terms of pouring your latte art. That's still on you, so it's not taking away from that. It's just like you say, making
Romero,
a lot of the parts.
Yeah, but when you work on this machine for a while and you consistently hit excellent scores, you just get a good feel for how long a shot should run. And then when you start steaming milk and you steam it to the same temperature at every time, you get that hand feel of this is what the temperature should feel like. And those are the fundamental skills we would like to see these baristas retain as they move along the chain, as they move and jump beyond. Maybe they work for this franchise today, because baristas are continuously moving as well, looking for new ventures, like supporting different companies, always looking for a change. So we just want to make sure that we empower them as much as possible, working on our machines so that they could be ready when moving out there. Well, a great analogy I think one of the guys told me was, with other machines, it always felt to him like he was studying for a history test. Every 4 weeks or every 6 weeks, the barista trainer would come along. We'll put the little scale down. They've got the timer. He's stressed as hell because he's like, oh, it's time to perform. They pull like 3 or 4 or 5 shots. They time them. They change the grind. They ask him, how do you change the grind? What should you do? And it's been the first time he knows, fundamentally he's known these things, but he doesn't interact with it every day. And he said working on the Henlo machine is more like when he studied for maths. Every day he just sits and he just practices, and he sees when I tamp a little bit, the score changes this. When I change the grind, the score does this. So he gets very much more useful feedback from the machine, and that just has to be positive. And now when the barista trainer comes along every 6 weeks, he's on top of it because he does it every day. I understand fundamentally. This morning he dialed it in, and he's just ready. I think that's going to be the most powerful thing for the markets in South Africa.
Something that used to encourage me as a barista, or at least make me think differently, was, someone said, you practice something for 1,000 hours, you could be a master in it. But as a barista, where that doesn't always apply is you would need to be actively practicing and crafting your skills, honing your skills for those 1,000 hours. But it's very easy for a barista to show up, and because of the rush and, just trying to serve customers, you basically do the same bad habits 1,000 hours long, So you come in, you steam the same, and then you look 2-3 years later and your knowledge could still be the same. The way you steam milk could still be the same, the latte art. And I think what's cool with the Henlo machine is it kind of forces you to stop after, like, you have to see, unless you're ignoring the screen. But even then, if you go out of the loud shot range, it's literally going to pop up a message being like, hey, this is running too fast. Please change your grinder. What's too slow? Do you have the blind filter basket?
Yeah.
And I think that's great because it forces, us to actually pay attention to the machine, to the shots as people are busy working on it. So I think it only makes sense that they'd see growth a lot quicker at a lot quicker and better rate as well.
Yeah, no, I think definitely that was ultimately the goal. It's not about being degrading to someone who is not doing well, because I think that's what a lot of the guys are fearful on. And we've got these competitors in terms of the data space, but they don't see what they're doing. The managers see the data at the end of the week, and they come back and just scream at them for being bad during the week, but they basically still flying blind. You can tell the guy how many times, but unless he sits down and he actually starts practicing this thing, that's the fundamental disconnect. And that's what we continuously would like to improve. So maybe you decide for your baristas, when they run out of score, they get a 5-second timeout, before they're allowed to move on. Just something that's, it's a hassle if you don't do it right. If you do it right, it's going to be easy. It's going to be smooth sailing. And that's going to be, I think, fundamentally what we challenge the public's perception. And that's why we want to appeal to the public, because we probably feel that when you see a Henlo on bar, the chances are really, really high that it's going to be quite a consistent experience out of there. But yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. And I'm not sure, I believe that up in Joburg now was the first time that the Henlo Q was publicly revealed or announced. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've chatted to some people, put it a bit on our Instagram and such, just to gauge interest. But we're busy finalizing the single unit now. It's important to note that this is still fundamentally the same machine. It's just in a 1-group variant, but we've added this 2-group steam boiler because we think, we want to see this work in a commercial environment for those guys whose budget is between, say, 70 and 90,000. They don't see the volume to go purchase a high-end 2-group machine, but there's no reason that they shouldn't get access to all of these features as well. And that's exactly why we decided to take this route. But we probably in about 4 weeks, I reckon we'd be done with the prototype and showing it around to our early adopters and the guys who backed it, but then also to the general public when we showcase it around a bit. And then hopefully later in the year, we can start full-time shipping these on a commercial level. The only step we still need to take is certification for it, which is always a little bit here and there, but it's a necessity. And we've got a lot of learnings from the previous ones we had to put through certification to ensure we do things the right way. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll rock up at Better Brew with at some point you get some time to play on it and give some feedback on what your thoughts are.
Yeah. That's why I brought it up now. I think it's one of the machines I was most excited about. because for those listening that maybe haven't seen it yet, obviously go to Henlo's page, and even on the Instagram you'll find it. But it's a beautiful looking small machine. It looks domestic, right? It looks like a very fancy domestic machine, maybe similar to La Mazzocco Mini or even a Sanremo U. Looks high end, but when we were chatting to you and finding out what, like what you just mentioned, the thought that you put into it, I mean, it's a commercial machine,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of the people I've been chatting to, like, oh, it's a bit too small for them. And I've also explained it to him, like, no, you don't understand the boiler he put on. Like, you can just keep running it, keep
Yeah.
steaming back to back. And I don't know if you just want to touch on that, maybe kind of explain who it's for and a bit more about the machine, just so people can really see it. Yes, it's small, it's really compact, but this is still a beast.
Like I said initially, Rero, it's designing coffee machines is not designing cars. It's fundamentally a kettle. And we've got all these little technology things, like we've got the automatic startup that enables the machine to turn itself on. So it can, even if the heat up time is quite long, you can put it in a semi-standby mode, which keeps it up to temperature, and it can quickly jump up to where it needs to be without using too much power. So if all of these things are available, it becomes so blatantly obvious. Just make the boiler bigger, put a bigger element in there. The cost for the client is essentially nothing. Cost of manufacture for adding, 10 centimeters of stainless steel is literally like $10. Yeah, bigger element, just making sure there's enough power adequate. There's no reason these things don't need to be taken. It's just a little bit of out of the box thinking. But now we don't have to package it in such a big machine because we're dropping down to a single group. We can have a rotary vane pump instead of the variable speed drive. And then we can also remove the control solenoids because you only have one line stream. And there's all these little technical terms of things, but what all that you need to know is you've got the same group bed, the same steam on, same temperature, adequate pressure. We expect you to plumb it in like you would a commercial machine, and therefore we could take these steps to minimize size and reduce cost for the guys this machine is really, really for. Don't worry if you're in the home units at some point. We will get there, but it's a volumes game. We started with the 2 group, which is going to be the one that drives the company first, and then the single unit was something highly anticipated, like you said, for yourself and a couple of other people who see the value in creating much better coffee than anything else they can at equipment at that price point for their cafe. And I'm still at the completely think that when you've got exceedingly capable barista, or yourself is the coffee the coffee guy making coffee, there's no need to buy an expensive machine because it fundamentally comes about to your skill level. But the technology we employ is there to bridge the gap for guys, not just being familiar, but also guys newly skilled. Especially, I think, and I also think in South Africa, that's especially true for your smaller cafes. The chances are when you run a cafe you're doing between 100 and 300 cups a day, you most likely already have a skilled barista because you could afford to pay him well, or you could get these types of things, and you're situated in a more high-end area or more just more foot traffic. So these things make sense. Where most of South Africa and most of where the specialty coffee needs to go are places where maybe there is only 20 patrons in the entire town for the day for coffee. You just don't have those types of feet, and why should they be limited by the experience that they can have? So we pretty much knew exactly what type of client we were chasing with this machine, and it is going to appeal to a lot of people. But with this, what we want to push is expanding specialty in South Africa. I really think with my time engaging with a lot of the roasteries who act as resellers, but also just got friends with them, we just want to see this market expand and not chase down and be this threatening, this is my client, this is your client. So I think
Yes.
really what we need to do is get more guys into specialty. I would love to see the Henlo, or as we approach financing deals and things, get into more offices, for instance. I would have killed to have a machine like this in the office if we had a dedicated barista, or like they coined the term, receptionista. So you've got one person,
Yeah.
no training back in whatever. She plays on the machine every day. He plays on the machine every day. They could just continuously see their scores improve, make coffee for the office. They make their revenue elsewhere. But now you've got a nice, recurring client for your commercial, your roasteries, all the specialty guys doing really, truly great stuff in South Africa. So I think, yeah, like I said, Romero, it's really not about the equipment that we do. That's just what we ended up doing, but it's really about this thought of what can we create that's unique. And I don't think it's something we would have seen if we opened up that first machine instead of trying to break things and do things on our own way. Yeah.
And with the Henlo Q, so is all this still the same gamification, scoring, the dashboard, is all of that still available with that as well?
Yes, fundamentally, it's exactly the same machine. Just to give you an idea, one of the only proprietary component we have in our entire machine is our PCB, and our single group, two group, and three group are all going to have the same one. So we're dropping down,
Wow.
going for the volume so we can drop price. And then because of the electronics, it's so easy to scale because our machines fundamentally use so little power aside from your elements. We managed to fit all of these things onto one PCB. So you're getting the exact same machine with a
Yeah.
lot more things to plug in if you really want to.
Yeah. And so in terms of the Henlo Q, if someone was wanting to maybe expand, into that, smaller area like you mentioned, what would you say the upper limit is cups per day for the Henlo Q?
No, I think, Romero, we're going to have to bash that out next time when we drop the machine there at Brew Better for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, we said.
But with that said, from the learnings I've had, and I've seen the guys operate in the likes of Truth, I keep going back to, I was just so amazed by how these guys can operate on a two group. By looking at it, the guy basically steams full time, one of your baristas. So if you've got two baristas on a Henlo Q, the one guy would easily be able to take orders, pull shots, take orders, pull shots, rinse and wipe in between, while the other person is consistently on the steaming. And then there's no reason with two portafilters why you wouldn't be able to hit the maybe 2 cups a minute. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but we'll see if we can get to that. I think that's a decent goal to aim for one guy in terms of extractions. So if you think you can go sit down in any cafe and you can try and count how many cups they put out on their three group at your what you thought was a coffee establishment. I won't name any brands or famous brands, but yeah. So you would be surprised by when you're adequate and when things are streamlined, how quickly you can actually extract and what the limiting factors do become.
Definitely excited to test that. Even when we were chatting, for those listening, I was telling Henlo it would be amazing to take the little machine just to really break people's perceptions and ideologies about it. To take it, have like two people on bar, and just see how much you can crush out of it in an hour.
Yeah.
Because even when we were doing a lot of mobile coffee, we had to do weddings sometimes with a single group head machine. Obviously not a Henlo machine. But even then, people are always surprised how much you can bang out with good efficiency on bar,
Yeah.
and working well as a team. Like you said, the person is always just steaming. The person with the shots can never, the person steaming can never keep up with the person pulling shots. You always pull more shots than what one person can steam, just because of the amount of time it takes. And then with two portafilters, literally while one is extracting, you're already busy prepping your second one, taking it out, rinsing, and going. So it will be really fun to see.
Yeah, I think it will be great. I can't wait.
And is there anything cool coming up? Any events that you guys are doing? And if not, or on top of that, how can people kind of reach out or follow what's happening and just stay up to date with Henlo?
Yeah, I think the easiest would be just to follow our Instagram. We are quite active on there as well on our LinkedIn. But truly, if people just want to get in touch, they should just pop me an email. We are very active on our emails and we do reply very, very promptly. We take our customer relations at this stage in the business very seriously. And we found that this has paid off in the past. There are some guys I've met in the industry through direct and indirect means who we touch base for something completely unrelated, and then a couple of months or years down the line, then the opportunity arises. So we've seen value in these types of engagements, and I implore someone who wants to get in touch, if they think they can add value in any manner at all, it would just be, we're just very, very keen to see people and help people in the journey as well, and give them a bit of understanding about who we are and what we do. There's always things to be done with a startup. So if there's places and opportunities, we're very keen to hear them out. But aside from that, from new experiences, we'll probably be probably a shout out to myself, but I think we'll very, very likely just need to finalize some things, be it the Creative Coffee Week. They've got this new thing where you have these rooms that you can go to, and we're going to be hosting a session in one of them. So that would be some place people might be able to come down to Durban if they're keen on Creative Coffee Week, and then we can have a chat in person there. Else, you can just follow us where we're being in around the country, Cape Town from time to time again to deliver some machines based on new orders we get. And then we'll definitely be at the Specialty Expo in Cape Town closer to the end of the year. I think that's going to be the biggest next coffee. Hopefully with a couple of our single groups as well this time.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
to
yeah.
elevate the game from the previous one.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely keen to have you back again. Even like you mentioned in person as well will be awesome. I like to end each episode as we're coming to the end of this one just by asking our guests one tip to brew better coffee for people, whether it's at home or in a cafe. Just your one tip if you can leave someone for better coffee.
So for me, when extracting espresso, I've always found I'm much more consistent if I don't overfill the basket. When you start creating your perfect extraction based on the runtime your roastery tell you should aim for, I always like to underdose a little bit first. Make sure that the resistance from your extraction comes from the grounds itself and not from how full your basket is. And then you can always add more in till you get as powerful a shot as you want to. I'm not talking much, maybe 2-3 grams, a little bit lower than what you want to end up with. But I found that it leads for me to much less wastage from trying to dial in a coffee. Yeah, honestly, I think that would be my brew better tip.
Hey, amazing, man. Hello, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Rivero.
Very excited to catch up in person again. And as soon as we end up being able to test the queue, definitely got to get a video of that as well for everyone to see.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and putting us on your platform. It's always great to engage just as much as we can with South African markets. Really a great couple of guys around the country just doing incredible things.
For sure. For sure. Thanks, man. Chat
Thanks,
soon.
Rivero. Cheers.